So ladies and gents, good afternoon. It's now 12 o'clock and it's the perfect time to start this afternoon's webinar. And this afternoon's webinar is entitled The Local Government Pension Scheme and Shared Cost AVCs. Let me introduce myself so you know who's speaking today. So my name is Greg March. I'm a Senior Retirement Educational Specialist for AVC Wise. And I've got the pleasure of taking you through the next 40 minutes or so explaining the benefits of actually planning for what is and what will be your retirement. But just before we get into the content today of the webinar, just be aware that the information we put together, you shouldn't take it as regulated financial advice. It's purely for educational purposes only. And also, when we speak about taxation and tax rulings, be aware we're basing the current information on the current tax treatments. And remember that taxation can change and will change again in the future. And when we discuss investments, be aware that funds can fall as well as rise. And any past performance should not be seen as a guide to future possible performance. So what are we going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so? Well, the first thing I'll do is give you a quick overview and explain how your local government pension scheme builds up and the benefits of being a member of the LGPS. I'm going to bring it live by introducing you to a case study today, which is a young lady called Sarah. And we'll look at how Sarah's pension has built up over her career within the local government. Then I'll talk about how you can increase your own retirement benefits going forward. And this is probably really important for most of you because unfortunately the majority of us won't have sufficient income to do what we want to do in retirement, and therefore we need to start increasing as and when we can. And the way of doing so, the most unique way of doing so, the most tax efficient way of doing so, is by looking at the salary sacrifice shared cost AVC. So in addition to explaining how the local government pension itself builds up, I'm also going to talk to you about how the benefits of the salary sacrifice share cost AVC could be really useful for you going forward. And then we'll talk about the other options that are available for you at the point in which you retire. So how can you access your pension? How can you access your AVC? And what options do you have? So all of this will run through the next 40 minutes or so. Remember, any questions, feel free to ask those questions by using that chat box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So let's start off by giving you a quick overview of the benefits of being a member of the local government pension scheme itself. Now, what you need to be aware of is that the LGPS, to give it a short title, is actually one of the better pensions that you can access. And the reason for that is that when you get to the point in which you decide to retire, what the local government pension will actually do is pay you a guaranteed pension from the point in which you retire all the way through until the point in which you die. So that pension is guaranteed, it's secure, and it's paid for life. That pension also increases each year as measured by inflation. And what the government does, it looks at the rate of CPI, the Consumer Price Index, in September. And whatever rate it is in September, they will then allocate this towards your pension from the following April. So not only do you have a guaranteed income that's payable because of the local government pension scheme, but also that income will increase in line with inflation. Now, when you make contributions towards the local government pension itself, then you do benefit from tax relief. So this is where the government will actually fund part of your contribution. So if you're a base rate taxpayer, the government will fund 20% of your contribution. If you're a high rate taxpayer, it's possible the government could fund up to 40% of your contributions. This is known as tax relief. Another benefits you get by being a member of the LGPS is that if you were to draw your pension today and die prematurely, if you're survived by a partner, then they can receive a proportion of your pension until the point in which they die. So that pension is protecting not only you, but also your partner as well. And when we talk about the contributions that you need to make to be a member of the LGPS, please be aware that your employer heavily subsidizes that contribution. What your employer does, they actually put away roughly 3 times your personal contribution just to ensure that you have these valuable benefits. And for a lot of people, the actual thought of retiring, although it might be a beautiful thing to think about, can actually be quite scary. So what the local government have built into their pension scheme is the ability to reduce your hours prior to retirement, so you can kind of practice being a pensioner, if that makes sense, and draw part of your pension. Now, this is known as flexible retirement. So this gives you the ability to take part of your pension from the local government, reduce your hours, become used to being a pensioner, and then retire fully. Now, with flexible retirement, you've got to request it, and it has to be at the granted permission by your employer. So it's not guaranteed that you can get it. You have to request it, but it is one way in which some people like to actually retire because it isn't such a culture shock of just leaving the organisation on a Friday, never to return. So it's slowly becoming a pensioner. Another benefit you've got with the LGPS, you've got the ability to reduce the cost of your contribution to reduce the benefits you get if you find yourself in financial hardship. You've got ill health protection and also the ability as well to receive a tax-free lump sum. And I'll explain how that works for you now. So with the local government pension, it all depends on when you joined the local government itself, to what schemes you have access to. Now, if you've been in the local government for a long time, it's possible that your pension is actually made up of 3 different calculations. If you've only just joined the local government, then your pension will be built up with 1 calculation. So let me explain what those calculations are. So for the current way in which your pension is calculated, so this is for anyone that's been a member of the local government pension scheme from 2014 going forward, the current calculation to work out your pension is known as a career average revalued earning calculation, or CARE to give it a short title. And what simply happens under the CARE scheme is that for every year that you're working, what you simply do is each year from 2014 going forward, look at what salary you're on, and then 1/49th of that will go towards your pension. So if between 2014 and 2015, you're on a salary of 49,000 as an example, 1/49th of that, i.e. £1,000, is the amount of pension that you built up for that year. You do this calculation every single year in isolation going forward. So 14 to 15, a 49th of your salary, 15 to 16, a 49th of your salary, and so on. That's actually the pension you're building up. But remember, your pension does increase with inflation. And then when you get to the point in which you decide to retire, that pension is then payable to you until, unfortunately, death occurs. So that's the current scheme. Now, if you've got service before 2014, part of your calculation will also incorporate a final salary pension calculation. And the way in which that's done is as follows. So for any service you may have had between 2008 and 2014, this part of the pension, the calculation is based upon the final salary. Now, this doesn't mean the salary that you're on between these dates. It actually means the salary you'll be on at the point in which you decide to retire. So if you're going to retire, let's say in 2030, it'll be that salary that this calculation is then based upon. And what you get for service between 2008 and 2014 is very simplistically 1/60th of whatever salary you're on at the point in which you retire per year. So the maximum service you can have under the 60th scheme is 6 years. So the maximum calculation you can have under this part of the pension will be 6/60ths of whatever your final salary is at the point in which you retire. And this is an additional element of pension that's paid to you in addition to the career average revalued earnings scheme. Now, if you've joined before 2008, you'd have had access to the original final salary scheme. And the biggest difference between the 60th scheme and this scheme is that this gives you 1/80th of your salary per year. So for any service up to 2008, you would have received 1/80th of your salary per year, which is actually slightly less than the 60th scheme. And the best way to visualize that, if you get a cake and cut it into 80 slices, and I get a cake and cut my cake into 60 slices, then my slice will be slightly bigger than yours. And it's because of that, under the 80th scheme, in addition to the pension that you're building up, you'd also receive an automatic tax-free lump sum. So for any of you that have got access to the 80th scheme, if you look at your pension statement, it'll give you a pension of, which is a combination of the career average, the final salaries, and it will also show you an automatic tax-free lump sum for service born prior to 2008. Now, you have to take that tax-free lump sum. You can't reject it. You've got to take it. Now, for the other schemes that we've mentioned, the 49th and the 60th, even though they don't discuss lump sums, you still have the ability to request a tax-free lump sum. And I'll explain how you can do that in just a few moments' time. So let me bring this to life if I can by using the case study for today, which is a young lady called Sarah. And it's estimated that when Sarah gets to her normal pension age, and for Sarah that's 67, so that's linked to her state pension age, it's estimated that her salary will be £29,608. And remember, it's this salary that we use at the age of 67 to do the calculations under the final salary calculation. So for Sarah, she joined in 2007. So this means that she has 1 year in the 80th section. So 1/80th of her final salary will give her a pension of £397 per annum. Plus, remember, she gets that automatic tax-free lump sum. Sarah's also got 6 years in the 60th scheme, so that's an additional pension of $3,177. But the bulk of Sarah's pension, though, is actually born from the current scheme, which is the Career Average Revalued Earnings Scheme. And it's estimated that by the time that Sarah gets to age 67, she'd have had 18 years in that scheme. So there are 18 separate calculations done to work out what a pension would be. And this gives Sarah an extra pension of £11,346. So for Sarah to calculate what the full pension would be worth, all she simply does is she adds these three pensions together, and that gives her a total income of just under £15,000 per year from the age of 67. That income is liable to tax because it's above our personal tax threshold, and I'll discuss that in just a moment. And that's payable from the day that she retires all the way through until the day that she dies. And remember, if Sarah is superseded by a partner, a percentage of that pension will then be paid to the partner until they die. And that's why it's such a valuable scheme. Now, the only downside to this pension is for Sarah is that it's payable at the age of 67. So that's Sarah's state pension age. And Sarah doesn't really want to work until she's 67 because Sarah has the desire of actually retiring just a little bit sooner. And in fact, Sarah wants to retire at 64. So what she needs to find out is if she does retire at 64, what will the impact be upon the local government pension scheme? Because ultimately, if Sarah decides to take the pension at 64 rather than 67, the local government will have to pay that pension to Sarah 3 years longer than they expected. And it's because of that, there will be a reduction in the benefits payable. And that reduction equates to approximately 5% per annum for every year that you take it before the normal pension age. So Sarah decides to go at 64. So she wants to find out what the figures are at 64 for a pension. So she goes online to the pension calculator. She puts in a voluntary retirement age of 64, and then she presses submit. And when she does that, the calculator comes back and tells Sarah that if she does go at 64 rather than 67, then the local government are prepared to pay her a pension of just under £11,000 per year. The reason for that, remember, is that she's getting it for 3 years longer. Now, Sarah's not too concerned with this reduction because she expected it. And also, Sarah's a realist as well. She said, well, if I do go at 64, by the time I get to 67, I would have received around about £33,000 worth of pension benefits that I wouldn't have got otherwise. However, there is a reduction that has to be dealt with. So what Sarah decides to do is look at all the possible strategies that she's got while she's still a member of the local government to see what she can do to offset the impact of this reduction. And that would allow her to go at 64 rather than 67. So she looks around to see what's available for her. And the first thing that she comes across is the ability to buy extra pension itself from the local government. Now, you may or may not be aware, but you all have the ability to increase your pension benefits by buying what is known as additional pension contributions, or AVCs to give it a short name. So an additional pension contribution is where you can buy extra pension from the local government. And you still receive tax relief like you do on your main scheme. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, the government will actually fund 20% of the cost of your contribution. And as with your main scheme, any extra pension that you purchase would increase in line with inflation as measured in September's CPI rates. The problem is, though, with the additional pension contribution, it is not as flexible as Sarah would like. One of those flexibilities being that she likes the fact that if she dies, that a part of that pension goes on to a partner. But unfortunately, with an APC, that doesn't happen. In the event of death, that pension dies with you. And also, the cost of the additional pension contribution is based upon different factors. So it's based upon your age, your gender, and how long you're prepared to pay into the APC. And for Sarah, it's worked out that if she was to buy additional pension contributions, then she'd need to survive at least 15 years in retirement just to get her initial outlay back. So if she was to go at 64, she'd be 79 before she starts seeing the benefits of the additional pension contribution. So it's quite an expensive thing for Sarah to look at. So she knows that it's there, but it's not the best option for Sarah. So she wants to look at what other options that are available for her. So the second thing that Sarah looks at is the ability to actually request a tax-free lump sum. And the reason that Sarah thinks that this could assist her in her case is that if she has a tax-free lump sum up front, so at the age of 64, she could actually use that to fund the nice things in life, the holidays, the retirement things that she's looking forward to. And she's aware that she has the ability to request a tax-free lump sum from the local government pension. And in fact, they tell her that she can actually request up to 25% of what is known as the cash equivalent value of the local government pension scheme as a tax-free lump sum. Now, don't be too concerned about how that calculation is done, but for all of you, you do have what we call the cash equivalent value that's built around your local government. And you're allowed to request up to 25% of that as tax-free cash. Now, Sarah inquires about this because she's quite excited about having that lump sum up front. But unfortunately, what she finds out is that if she wishes to take the lump sum from the local government pension scheme, she actually has to give back even more of that local government pension than she was hoping for. So remember, by going early, she's losing just over £4,000 worth of income. If she wishes then to take a lump sum, she has to give back even more of that pension. And in fact, the local government tells Sarah that for every pound of pension that she gives back, they'll only give her 12 times as a tax-free lump sum. So if Sarah was to give back £1,000 worth of pension, she'd only receive £12,000 as a tax-free lump sum. So Sarah quite quickly works out then, well, therefore, if she retires and she survives 12 years in retirement and she takes a lump sum, because the commutation factor is 1 for 12, after 12 years, she's actually going to be technically worse off. So even though she knows she can access the additional lump sum from the local government, it's not the right thing for Sarah to do. So she decides to look around to see what other options are available. And this is where Sarah stumbles across the salary sacrifice shared cost AVC. Now, all this is just an additional pot, so it's in addition to the local government, where Sarah has the ability to save for her own retirement future. And in fact, that when she puts money into this AVC, not only will she benefit from the tax relief that the government gives her on the main schemes and via the AVC, so this is where the government pays an additional 20% of the contribution, but under the salary sacrifice arrangement, she'll also benefit as well from national insurance relief. So what this simply means, by investing into the AVC for Sarah's retirement future, the government, if Sarah was a basic rate taxpayer, would actually fund 20% plus 12%, which is 32% of the cost of that contribution. So that's a real tax break for Sarah. But one of the unique factors for Sarah and for yourself is that because she's working for the local government, when she gets to the point in which she'd like to retire, so in Sarah's case, 64, if she takes this at the same time as a main pension scheme, it's potentially possible, now there are certain limits to that, but it is potentially possible that Sarah could take the whole of the value of this AVC as a tax-free lump sum. Now this is perfect for Sarah because what she wants is a lump sum up front to allow her to do the things that she's always dreamt of doing in the early part of retirement. So by saving into the AVC, she's got the unique factor that she can take it out completely tax-free if linked to a main scheme and within limits. But she also gets the benefits of the fact that the government's funding 32% of the cost of her contribution. And the other big point for Sarah as well is that if she changes her mind when she gets to retirement and doesn't want to take the pot as a tax-free lump sum, she can actually use the value of the AVC to buy extra pension through the local government, so through the APC mechanism. Or she could take a pot to the high street and buy extra pension through the high street. So this gives Sarah all of those possible choices that she'll ever need, lump sum or income. The other thing that Sarah likes about the AVC as well is that the contribution that Sarah sets can be changed at any given stage. So if she was to set a contribution today, she can increase it the following month or decrease it the month after that. And that gives Sarah peace of mind, knowing that if she does have a bill that's unexpected, such as the boiler blowing up or the car's MOT, and she's struggling financially for that specific month, she can drop a contribution down to as little as £2, do what she needs to do, and then increase it the following month. So it's got a lot of flexibility built into the AVC. So let me give you some figures to make this a little bit more exciting if we can. So let's say that Sarah decides currently her affordability from her salary is £100 per month. Because of the benefits of the government funding part of Sarah's contribution for the tax and national insurance savings, that £100 will only actually cost Sarah or you from your wallet, from your purse, the equivalent of £68.12. So let's just look at that And let's just break that down. If you were to give me £68.12 today, I would give you back £100 in an envelope marked retirement. Instantly, that equates to a growth rate of just under 47%. Question is, why wouldn't you want to benefit from this? So £100 towards your AVC, you would only lose the equivalent of £68 from your paycheck. That's a 46.79% increase on every single contribution. Don't miss out on what is there. Now, let me explain how this works via the payslip, because ultimately this is a salary sacrifice arrangement and you need to know how this works. So I want to introduce you to Joe. Now, Joe works for Sarah, currently doesn't have an AVC, but Sarah tells Joe the importance of planning for what ultimately is his retirement. And if Joe doesn't plan for his retirement, then let's be honest, who will? Now, Joe's a basic rate taxpayer, so he's got a salary of £30,000, which means that his gross salary on his payslip, so that's the salary he gets before deductions, is £2,500. Joe pays to be a member of the LGPS, and remember, his employer's paying 3 times what he pays, so Joe's paying £162 per month, and currently there are no AVCs. Remember as well that all of us have to pay income tax if we've got income above what we call the personal tax threshold, and that's currently set at £12,570. So that's the standard threshold before we start paying tax. Now, some of you might have a slightly different threshold, but the standard one is £12,570. So for any income you receive per year up to that level, you don't pay tax. Any income above that level, if you're a basic rate taxpayer, you pay tax at 20%. And for Joe, that's exactly what he does. So that's £258 is paying in tax. And also remember, we pay national insurance as well on our earnings. And the threshold for national insurance is now exactly the same as the threshold for tax, so it's £12,570. And for any income above that, we pay national insurance at a rate of 12%. So when you think of your salary and what's taken from your salary on a monthly basis, it's actually 32%. So roughly a third of your salary above your personal allowance goes back to the government in tax. Now, if you're aware of that, as most people aren't, but if you were, what you might decide to do is try to get some of that back, and I'll explain how we do that again via that AVC. So Joe decides now that he's going to start investing for his retirement future, and he works out his affordability to be £250 per month. So Joe sets up a contract for £250 per month, and then this is what happens to his payslip. The first thing you'll notice is that Joe's gross pay is reduced to £2,251. Now, the reason for this, as we mentioned, is a salary sacrifice arrangement. So what Joe's actually stating is that he's prepared to sacrifice a proportion of his salary for these benefits. But I want to come back to that in just a moment. Now, the contract is known as a Shared Cost Salary Sacrifice AVC. So what this simply means that when Joe makes a contribution, irrespective of the size of that contribution, so it'll be £100 per month, £250 per month, £1,000 per month, Joe will always share just £1 of the cost of that contribution. So irrespective of what contribution you make, £1 will be your personal contribution. The balance under this example of £249 is the amount that Joe sacrifices, and what the employer then does is the employer pays that contribution on your behalf. So this means that Joe has a AVC payment of £250, where £1 is a personal contribution and the £249 is the sacrificed amount. Now, let me put all of your minds at rest when you're looking at this payslip. This reduction in gross salary is only for the shared cost AVC arrangement. If you are in a final salary pension scheme, the career average pension scheme, if you get a pay rise, if you're made redundant, then for the majority of you, all of those terms are based upon your original salary. So for the majority of you, there's no impact by having this arrangement. In fact, there's a pure benefit, and the reason there's a pure benefit is by using the AVC under a salary sacrifice arrangement, your income tax will reduce and your national insurance taxation will reduce as well. So by using the AVC, the amount of tax that you pay per month will go down, and the amount of national insurance you pay per month will go down as well. Now, what this simply means to keep it really plain and simple, is that for Joe to have £250 going away towards his retirement future, because of the mechanisms of the salary sacrifice share cost AVC arrangement, that will only cost Joe the equivalent of £170 from his take-home pay. So let's just look at that again, and let's take away all these figures and ask the question. If I said to you today, please give me £170, and what I'll do, I'll give you an envelope back marked retirement with £250 in it, why wouldn't you do that? And that's the question you're going to pose for yourself. So whatever your affordability level is, why wouldn't you want to benefit from this? Because ultimately that £250 is going to improve your retirement on the day that you decide to retire. It could even bring your retirement date forward. So if you don't want to work till 66, 67, 68, whenever your state pension age is, this could be a vehicle that brings that retirement date forward. So how does it work? Well, very simplistically, you decide how much of your salary you'd like to put away on a monthly basis. And remember, you've got the flexibility on how much you put in. So you can change this every single month if you so desire. The funds will go into your AVC, so that depends on what council you're working for, but it could be the Prudential, it could be Standard Life, it could be Legal and General, or even Clerical and Medical. And when you place money into the AVC, you will be asked where to invest. Now, please be aware there are investments for absolutely every single one of you. And if you're not confident of choosing investments yourself, the majority of councils will have a default fund where they believe this is right for you, and or what we call a lifestyle strategy, where they will actually take on board how to invest your AVC and reduce the risk for you in preparation for retirement. So if you've got previous experience, you might decide to choose your own funds. If you're not too sure what fund to choose, check to see if there's a default strategy, and or look at that lifestyle strategy as well, where it's actually done for you. So don't be too concerned with the fund choices. And at the point in which you do get to the point in which you're looking to retire, remember you can take the whole of the value if you take it at the same time as your main scheme as a tax-free lump sum, but within limits. Or you can actually take the value of the AVC to buy extra pension through the high street or even through the local government itself. So it's a win-win situation for all of you. And that flexibility that we have is key, because for some of you, you might be at different stages in your life today, and you're thinking, oh, only if I could afford to put more into the AVC. Well, start with what you can afford today. Because as things change, I was speaking to a lady this morning who wants to start an AVC of £100 per month, but her mortgage is paid off in 18 months, and then she wants to come back and increase it to the maximum that she can possibly do. So that flexibility is there for all of you, and make the most of it as and when you can. And as we discussed just a moment ago, when we do look at the investment section, so the fund choice that we need to make, there are funds for everyone. If you're a high-risk investor looking for a higher return, then there are funds there for you to choose. But if you're very low risk or moderate to low risk, medium to low risk, then there are funds there for you as well. Because remember, for every contribution that you do make, even before we look at investment performance, you're getting a return as a basic rate taxpayer of 46.79%. So you might just be thinking, well, I'd like to just keep that return, and therefore I'll put it into a low or a medium to low risk fund. And also, as we mentioned previously, look out for those default funds that have been selected by the pensions, and also look at the lifestyle strategy as well, where it's all done for you. So if you're not too sure, then just seek some support if you can. So going back to Sarah, with Sarah's plight, where she'd like to go at 64 rather than 67, because she wanted to enjoy retirement before it was too late, then the perfect vehicle for Sarah to allow her to do so, as you would expect, would be the salary sacrifice shared cost AVC. And that vehicle is available for Sarah to take as a lump sum if she takes it at the same time as a main scheme. Now, let's look at your options for you, because you don't have to take it fully as a tax-free lump sum. Now, under the current government guidelines, the early stage in which you can access any form of pension is currently set at 55. Now, this will change going forward, but it's currently 55. So with Sarah, she could have the ability to take it all out as a tax-free lump sum if she so desires, as long as she takes it at the same time as her main scheme, and that's within limits. Or she could take part of it tax-free, and then use the balance if she wanted to buy extra pension through the high street or even through the local government. And you can have a combination of all. So you can have lump sum, pension from the government, and pension from the high street, or just take it all as a tax-free lump sum. Also, if you're looking to take your shared cost AVC before your local government pension, which you have the right to as long as you're over the age of 55, then what you'll need to do is transfer that AVC out of the salary sacrifice arrangement into the equivalent of a private scheme. And you have the ability to do that as well. So let me give an example of what Sarah could do. So do you know we said that Sarah could take the whole of the pot as a tax-free lump sum, but for her to do that, she's going to have to see those penalties on the local government pension scheme. So there is another strategy that I want to put your way. And this is where Sarah, at the age of 64, decides to leave the local government. But what she doesn't do is draw the local government pension scheme. So she defers that until she's 67. So this means that Sarah's no longer working and she hasn't currently got any form of income because she's deferred her scheme until she's 67. But what she does, though, have is an AVC that she's transferred into a personal scheme. And in that pot, as an example, we've got £48,000. Now, Sarah needs to use that £48,000 to fund a lifestyle. And this is a strategy that she decides to take on board because it's a very tax efficient strategy. So what she does at the age of 64, she requests from that £48,000 pension pot £16,000. So she takes £16,000 out of the pot. Now, because Sarah hasn't already taken any tax-free lump sum, from that £16,000, she can actually ask for 25% of it, i.e. £4,000, to be given to her as that tax-free cash. And that's on the proportion that she's drawn down. Now, this leaves Sarah, from that £16,000, once she's taken £4,000 tax-free, with £12,000 worth of capital that will be treated as income for that tax year. Now, let's assume that Sarah has no other form of income. So let's keep this clean and say it's on the 6th of April. So this brand new start of the brand new tax year. Because Sarah has a personal tax threshold that we discussed just a few moments ago of £12,570, if she's only got £12,000 worth of capital, that's below that threshold. So after a very quick conversation with HMRC, that will also be treated as tax-free cash. So she takes a 25% tax-free lump sum, and then the balance, because it's below a personal threshold, will also be treated as tax-free income. So this works for Sarah at the age of 64 so well that she decides to do it again at 65 and also at 66. So what this means for Sarah is that with a little bit of planning, that £48,000 AVC she's taken before the LGPS scheme, but she's still being able to access it completely tax-free, because she's created a strategy that allows her to have capital which is below a personal threshold, which means it's no or has no tax liability. And then you've got the 25% of each drawdown. So this is like a stepping stone process to actually getting to retirement with the local government itself. And then at the age of 67, Sarah then says to the LGPS that she wants to draw the benefits, and then they will give her a pension of £12,905. So that's the full pension that she's due to receive without any form of reduction. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's fine, Greg, but I'm sure that last time we spoke about a pension, it was just under 15,000. So if there's no reduction, why is it just under 13,000? Well, the reason for that is Sarah leaves the organisation at 64. So that means she hasn't put a 49th of a salary in for this year, or for this year, or for this year. And that's why the benefits are slightly less. But it's still a full pension without any form of reduction. So this is just another strategy to think about as part of your retirement. But the key to this, though, is that the thing that allows you to retire early under Sarah's case was the fact that she started putting money into the AVC. And that's the scenario for all of you as well. So let me just summarise what we've spoken about so far. So the local government pension scheme is actually the only public sector scheme that allows you to access the benefits of an AVC potentially completely as a tax-free lump sum. No one else will allow you to do that. Also, on the way in, when you're saving into the AVC, what you're also doing is reducing the tax and national insurance that you're actually paying on your salary today. So not only you've got the ability to access it as a lump sum tomorrow, you're also reducing your tax burden right now. 46.72% or 46.79% growth on every single contribution as a basic rate taxpayer. Why wouldn't you want to benefit from that? Compare that to your high street today. Why wouldn't you want to benefit from that? Irrespective of your affordability, why wouldn't you want to benefit from that. Now, again, there are always considerations that we need to be aware of and conditions. And the first condition for you to benefit from an AVC is that you have to be an active member of the local government pension scheme. When you're making these contributions, we can't put all of our salary in, unfortunately, because we have to ensure that we fulfill national minimum wage requirements and also something called the lower earnings limit. And the government loves paying tax relief because it knows the more tax relief it pays today, the less of a problem or less of a burden we're going to be when we retire. But they need to limit the elements of tax relief that it does pay. And the government limits that quite successfully through mechanisms such as the annual allowance and also the lifetime allowance. So that's just how the government limits what it pays out in tax relief. And remember, if you're worried about affordability, you have the ability to change your contribution every single month with this scheme. So you can go into your account today, establish it, you can drop it down next month, you can increase it the following month, and you can do this every single month if you so desire. And if you do decide to leave the local government, then you can't continue to fund your AVC, but any benefits you built up, you'll still be able to access in the ways that we described already during the webinar. So you're thinking, well, that's fine, Greg, but how do I actually get my hands on this AVC? How do I start planning for my own personal retirement? Well, all you need to do to establish an AVC is go onto the AVC Wise website, click on the account that should be there for you. If not, then just click on and create an account for yourself. Once that account's been created, click on New. So I'm new to AVCs, fill in the application, it takes you no more than 5 minutes, and then just press submit. Your employer will then check the application for you, and when they're happy, they'll push it through from the next available payroll. If you ever wish to amend your contribution, then all you simply do is go back onto your account and click amend, and it's as simple as that. So it's completely in your control, and when you amend it, it will then be changed from the next payroll. So it's as simple as that for all of you. Now, some of you, though, you might decide that you want to get a little bit more support in preparation for your AVCs. So we do offer the option to have a one-to-one call via Teams. And what we can do under the Teams call is that we can give you a lot of assistance on calculating what the maximum figures are that you can possibly try to build up in an AVC, the maximum contribution that you can make so you don't fall foul of the national minimum wage. And then we can also tailor that conversation to what you're trying to achieve. What I would say, though, is if you want a Teams call, a couple of things. First and foremost, if you request it, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute, please hang around to receive an email that gives you the date and time of your one-to-one. Because a lot of people request this, close the laptop, go on a holiday for 2 weeks, come back, only to find that there's been a meeting booked for you whilst you've been away. So just wait for that response to come through. But if you can also ensure that when you do have the one-to-one, you have a copy of your LGPS statement, to the set retirement age in which you'd like to go. So if you wanted to go at 64 like Sarah, then go online and get a copy of your statement that gives you a valuation to the age of 64 and what the benefits will be at that stage. Also, as well, have a pay slip, and if you've got existing AVCs, have a valuation to hand, because all of that will be really very useful for us to give you those calculations that you can see on the left-hand side. Now, remember, we cannot give you regulated financial advice. But what we can do, though, is give you a little bit of guidance, a little bit of support, and the knowledge and the confidence to make sure you're making the most of your AVCs. For further resources, then you've got access to our Knowledge Hub that we host with the AVC Wise website. And on the Knowledge Hub, we have calculators where you can sit down and say, well, listen, if I do put £50 a month away, £1,000 a month away, what would it cost me personally? And if I do that for a couple of months, or if I do that for 15 years, what would the potential benefits be for myself? So have a look at those calculators if you can. Now, just before I jump to another screen to see if there's any questions come through, which I don't think we've had at the current time, let me just explain how you can benefit from the AVC by contacting ourselves if you need to. So if you're looking to get a one-to-one via Teams, then simply send us an email if you can at support@avcwise.co.uk. We'll arrange a meeting for you. If you've got a partner, you can have your partner in that meeting as well. If you've got just general questions about how do things work, then literally pick up the phone or go into the live chat that you'll see when you go onto the website. And if you're looking for more information about the local government pension and how the pension works, then I'd highly recommend you spend a little bit of time on a Saturday or Sunday on the LGPS members website. So that'll give you lots of important information about how your LGPS benefits work. So let me just jump to a different screen before we bring the webinar to a close and answer any questions that we've got. So if anybody's got a question, put the questions into the chat box now, if you can, please. I know Vera said you've got a question. If you can just type your question in, then hopefully we can answer that before we bring the webinar to a close. So I'll just give it a second or so. Okay, so there's no questions come through. So if you do have questions, what I recommend you do is use that number that you can see on the screen, and we'll answer that question for you. So one question's come through. Can you carry over another private pension into the LGPS? Well, unfortunately, Vera, you can't transfer a private pension into an AVC, and you can't transfer a private pension into the local government pension scheme itself. So unfortunately, you can't. So that's the only question that we've had from today. So hopefully I've done my job right, or maybe you're all off having a spot of lunch. I don't know. So let me just summarize this webinar if I can, and we'll bring the session to a close. When we talk about this thing called retirement, I think a lot of us actually forget what retirement is and what retirement should be. Retirement is when we decide to leave work and start spending time on ourselves, having the life that we've always dreamt of. And that period of retirement could be 20 years, it could be 30 years, and it's going to be treated like a holiday. You have to fill the days yourself. And for the majority of people, when we fill in days, unfortunately, it costs us money because we like to do things like going out for meals, having coffees, going on holiday, etc., etc. And the best way for you to save for that is by using something like the salary sacrifice Shared Cost AVC, because that allows you to save in the most tax efficient manner. And remember, you are in a unique place today with the local government where they actually allow you to take the pot out as a tax-free lump sum. So thank you very much for your time and attention today. Hopefully you found today's webinar of use, and then we'll speak again later in the future. So thank you ever so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.